our Independence Day.
Donald says what Donald wants to say. It's his narrative. It's a false narrative.
Of course he lies. He lies relentlessly and constantly.
Everything about Donald Trump is fake.
But are there telltale signs?
3 indicators giving us confidence that this is deception.
That's enough. That's enough. That's enough.
His voice suggests he's not quite as certain as the words seem to want to portray.
For the first time, our team analyzes the words and body language of Donald Trump.
I looked at the rain, which just never came.
What he says.
My father is German, right? Was German.
His father was born and bred in New York.
How he says it.
Many of those affected were first responders, and I was down there also.
For some reason, he had to embellish this.
And what he means.
He's squirming. He's doing the Trump squirm.
Frame by frame.
Today, I'm very proud of myself.
Second by second.
Mr. President.
Our experts spot the truth about Trump. The Watcher.
I'm a doctor in emotional intelligence, and I specialize in comparing body language and facial expressions and voice with the messages and the words that people say.
The Listener.
I'm a professor of linguistics. I listen out for what people mean. That involves listening to what they say and how they say it, and what they intend to communicate.
And the Profiler.
I'm a consultant and forensic psychologist. Over the past 25 years, I've profiled some of the most infamous criminal minds and also some of the most complex personalities.
And now they say I'm immune.
It's said by some that Donald Trump bends the truth, even lies, to get what he wants.
We're gonna build a wall.
But does he believe everything he says? We look back on a life and a presidency when nothing, it seems, was off limits. Not even his father's place of birth. When trying to persuade and cajole the German government, this is what he said.
My father is German, right? Was German. And born in a very wonderful place in Germany. And so I have a great feeling for Germany.
So we've seen about 12 seconds of dialogue, but it's riddled with behavior that's contradicting that claim. Let's have a look.
My father is German, right? Was German. And born in a very wonderful place in Germany. And so I have a great feeling for Germany.
So I noticed 5 different indicators here. And one of those indicators is the hand shrug. We see this outward rotation of both hands. It's a gesture part of the full shrug with the shoulders lifting, which is contradicting the statement that his father is from Germany. Notice his legs, they raise and tense, which is unusual because throughout this interview he's fairly relaxed, but there's a tension comes up here. And then we see a eye closure where he blinks 3 times, and that's not baseline for Trump.
My father is German, right? Was German.
There's 3 or 4 blinks there, but they're longer than blinks for Trump, and the eye closure is a distancing away from the words he's using. The corner of the lips are stretched back horizontally. And what creates this is a muscle called the risorius muscle, connected from the corner of the lip to the side of the jaw. And this is a muscle which is activated in fear. And those combine to be reliable indicators of deception.
His speech pattern also contained clues.
My father is German, right?
He says my father is German, right? Then says
Was German.
he's doing a self-correction at that point. So is becomes was, but he's missed the pronoun out. He was German. He goes on to say
Born in a very wonderful place in Germany.
he's missing out the he was born in a very wonderful place. So that omission shows us there's some level of distancing going on. And this shouldn't be something you would have to distance from. It wasn't his father that was born there. So the distancing is probably for that.
My father is German, right? Was German.
His father was born and bred in New York. He doesn't see it as lying. It's more of a bending of the truth in order to ingratiate himself and charm the German people. Because, of course, his grandfather was German, not his father.
From day one, January the 20th, 2017, it was clear this was a US president like no other. The world witnessed the heavy rain and the crowd reaching for coats and umbrellas at Trump's inauguration ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President and First Lady.
Later that evening, at the Liberty Ball,
But I have to say, the crowd was unbelievable today. You know, I looked at the rain, which just never came. You know,
What we've got here is a series of about 4 or 5 blinks, which are quite long, about a third of a second.
You know, we finished the speech.
That breaks the criteria of a blink into an eye closure. You're cutting yourself off. That raises a suspicion. What's really interesting is Melania's response. As soon as he says the rain never came, and we'll see the offset of the smile, very sudden.
I looked at the rain, which just never came. You know,
Which is, she's as shocked as perhaps everybody else was. And then a little bit of an eye flash, which may indicate anxiety or fear of where's he going with this, because it's not true.
We get disfluency features, so we get ers and we get a repetition of the. And where we get that is important because that's the point he's talking about the rain.
I looked at the rain, which just never came.
Notice he tells us it never came, but he told us that after we looked at the rain, which is a hyperbolic backfire. You can't be looking at the rain if it never came.
I looked at the rain, which just never came.
It's impossible to look at the rain and it then never come. Because how would you know? He could have said, I was looking at the rain forecast, and then that would make sense, but he doesn't say that.
You know, we finished the speech, went inside, it poured.
So you've got to think what's going on here. And we have photographs of what was going on.
And then, amazingly, it rained, and then we went out. It's like God was looking down on us, I will tell you.
one of the main planners of the ceremony, confirms what the cameras showed.
I mean, you'd be standing there and it would be pouring. Donald says what Donald wants to say. It's his narrative. He would say whatever he wanted. There was no truth to it.
So when a fact doesn't support his fantasy idea of everything being great, he simply ignores it or he rationalizes it away. The actual crazy thing is that everybody around him enables this. He's got such a distorted view of what is real because he's surrounded by people who constantly agree with him.
Fast forward 4 years. November the 4th, 2020. Loyal followers rally round as Trump refuses to accept he's losing the presidency.
I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people. And we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it.
He's squirming. He's doing the Trump squirm. And if he was standing straight without a lectern, I'm pretty confident we'd see a outward turn of the hands, which is, I've no confidence in what I'm saying right now, a deceptive indicator.
I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good.
But when he's clamped to a lectern, that doesn't move. What we see is a squirming in the body. And so the hand gestures seem to be masked by holding the lectern, but they leak through the body when we see this movement. It's almost comical. This is a subconscious process when we contradict our words with our body language, and it's hard to control. It leaks somewhere, and here we see it from his shoulders.
He's like somebody who is too drunk to fight, but just can't quite back down. You know, and another thing, Georgia stopped counting.
It's also clear that we have won Georgia,
And another thing, they're counting illegal ballots.
I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots.
What you're seeing in this speech is what psychologists call narcissistic decompensation. And that's when the reality of a situation is such a harsh blow to somebody's ego and their sense of themselves that they don't want to believe it. And so their thinking becomes really quite distorted, and it can almost border on delusional.
It's also clear that we have won Georgia.
His voice goes up. He says,
Likewise, we've clearly won North Carolina.
a rising intonation we associate with questions, and he's not making a question here, he's making a statement. His voice isn't showing that drop in intonation, so his voice suggests he's not quite as certain as the words seem to want to portray.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election.
New York, 1985, and a big night for the Trump family.
Shakespeare said, never follow an empty wagon, because nothing ever falls off. Remember, you have to find your spark in life. Because in each and every one of us, there's a tank full of gas.
Graciously entertaining the audience, Fred Trump, Donald's father. He built the family business on affordable housing in New York's outer areas.
Fred Trump was not a stranger to mismanaging or manipulating the truth himself. His business was rumoured to be involved with the mafia, and he was rumoured to also be dodging millions of dollars worth of tax.
An account of the Trump family has now been written by Donald's niece. A psychologist, she claims, but he dismisses her story, that early circumstances in their home in Queens, New York, continue to shape his life.
When Donald was 2.5, his mother was very, very ill and was essentially unavailable to her children for about a year. That's an incredibly important stage in a child's life developmentally. So he's suddenly bereft of his primary connection to human love and affection. And because my grandfather had absolutely no interest in small children, Donald essentially felt abandoned. He was alone, he was terrified, and he was confused. There was nobody to help him make sense of the loss. So he had to develop some defense mechanisms to protect himself from those absolutely horrible feelings. And over time, they hardened into character traits.
Mary Trump says that as he grew older, Donald became bolder and more aggressive, challenging his mother and teachers. But Fred Trump liked what he called Donald's killer attitude.
And my dad, Freddie, was the oldest son. He was expected to be the one to take over, to succeed my grandfather in his business. And my grandfather was incredibly hard on my dad. He was very sensitive. So my grandfather's abuse of my father really beat him down.
So what you have to think is, Donald Trump, as a young boy watching this, usually he's ignored. What does he learn from it? Well, what he learns from it is that if he wants approval, he's got to be tough. He can't show any sign of vulnerability. To do that is to risk humiliation and punishment. So you can see that how that dynamic really shaped who he believed he was and who he believed he had to be if he wanted to win his father's affection.
For Donald, one of the drugs is attention, but it's not the kind of attention that replaces love, which he has, in my view, never really experienced. So it's this fruitless but interminable quest to find those things that have been missing in his life since he was 2.5 years old.
Deep down, he's really still that little boy seeking approval, seeking attention.
Soon, Donald led the family into the Manhattan property world. His brash bravado, supported by his father's financial brain.
Look at all this money coming. Here you go.
Donald fit the bill and was perfectly willing to put himself out there, be the center of attention, be flashy, be somebody who was completely willing to throw money around.
Oh, nice seeing you. You love me. You love me.
Yes.
That's nice. I love you too. Thank you. Good luck to you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
And that just appealed to my grandfather. It even overrode the undeniable fact that Donald wasn't actually good at business.
His father brokered most of his early successful deals. Left to his own devices, this is a man who's been bankrupt 5 times.
People have it or don't have it for certain things, and making deals is really something that just is either there or it's not there.
This image is what the American people trust. A self-made billionaire who is a super strategist, who is play hard, work hard. Actually, none of that could be further from the truth.
But building towers, casinos and golf courses wasn't enough. Donald Trump still craved more attention. Landing the presenter's role on The Apprentice and attracting record audiences gave him coast-to-coast recognition.
I tell it like it is. They better know who the boss is.
And soon, he was looking beyond television to Washington. For this campaign, he had a special weapon.
Twitter was his electric line, his electric connection right through to actual Americans. And it was hugely important for him because he could just tell it straight and tell it with bombast and vigor and excitement. And he loved doing that.
Donald Trump has said that having Twitter is like having his own newspaper, just without the legal problems. So what he recognises is he can say what he likes about anybody. He can put any version of reality out there. He can attack whoever he wants. And there are no real repercussions.
In 2011, Trump started tweeting questions about Barack Obama's legitimacy as president.
Whether or not Barack Obama was a secret Muslim and secretly wasn't actually born in Hawaii or America at all. He was some secret immigrant who'd been smuggled in from the Middle East, or that's how the conspiracy theory went. Obviously untrue.
Let him show his records. We don't know anything about this guy. Why doesn't he show the birth certificate?
When released, the birth certificate proved Barack Obama was American-born. Trump tried to take the credit.
Today, I'm very proud of myself. Our president has finally released a birth certificate.
At a journalists' dinner, it was payback time for honored guest Donald Trump.
All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. But you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
The most important thing for Donald Trump in his mind is it got him attention. You know, it got him talked about.
I tapped my wife on the knee. I said, Melania, do you believe this? Everybody's talking about me. They're up there. The president of the United States is talking about me during this whole thing. I'm having a great time. This is unbelievable.
But most observers agreed. Trump was hurt and wanted revenge on those who dismissed him as not serious.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running.
None of us in the family took it seriously. We thought it was a joke. We thought he thought it was a joke.
For President of the United States.
Well, I always remember George Clooney saying famously at a press conference,
"There's not going to be a President Donald Trump. That's not going to happen."
And we are going to make our country great again.
Now, everyone had to believe it. Donald Trump stormed the TV debates, claiming his main Republican rival was the liar.
Cruz was like, oh, this guy's a liar. That's why we call him Lying. We call him Lying Ted. We call him Lying Ted. I never saw.
And in the presidential campaign, wanting his Democrat opponent locked up.
And then, of course, we have Crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary. She's been crooked from the beginning.
The reason mock nicknames work is that they focus our attention on one feature of that person. So in effect, that person becomes just that. So Hillary is only crooked. That's all she is. And Ted Cruz is only lying. That's all he becomes. And they're effective because they're short and memorable.
It's much easier to point the finger at other people in the hope that it deflects attention away from you and what you're doing.
I think he's talking to an audience that believe that large chunks of the political arena are corrupt. He's echoing what they believe rather than influencing what they believe. The way he did it took it to a different level.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
One month after taking office, Donald Trump claimed his was the biggest presidential victory in more than 30 years.
I put it out before the American people, got 306 electoral college votes. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan.
A claim that was quickly exposed.
You said today that you had the biggest electoral margin since Ronald Reagan with 306 electoral votes. In fact, President Obama got 365 in 2000.
Well, I'm talking about Republicans.
President Obama 332 and George H.W. Bush 426 when he won as president. So why should Americans trust?
Well, no, I was giving them that information. I was just giving them a very, very big margin.
I guess my question is, why should Americans trust you when you accuse the information they receive of being fake when you're providing information that's
well, I was given that information.
Mr. President, President Trump. So there's one way of disconnecting from a statement as false, and that's to drop responsibility for it. I was given it. I heard. Someone said.
Well, no, I was given that information. I was just giving them a very, very big margin.
So he's reporting a third party, which detaches himself from this.
He begins to move the blame or shift the blame onto someone else. We had a very, very big margin. So notice the lack of details in his compared to what the press reporter was able to give. So all of those things tell us that Trump's struggling at this point.
So why should Americans trust?
Well, no, I was given that information.
He's attacking the questioner and he's attacking the question. Those two are two of the 27 indicators of deception, and we've got them here.
He's got to claim that he won by a greater margin than anybody since Ronald Reagan, which is just patently not the truth.
I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan.
How inadequate do you have to feel? How big does that hole in your soul have to be that becoming the president of the United States is not good enough? Reaching those dizzy heights is just not great enough. It's not brilliant enough. You have to add something to it. And the need that he's got for validation and praise it's a bucket that just can't ever be filled.
In a few moments, I will sign the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund for families who lost precious loved ones as a result of September 11th attacks. Thank you.
In July 2019, President Trump helped survivors and rescue workers still suffering after effects of the attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001.
And it would have been an extremely powerful speech.
Many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders.
Trump can deliver really good speeches. For some reason, though, he had to embellish this.
And I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself a first responder, but I was down there.
The problem with it is that he uses two butt constructions. So a butt construction is designed, if you like, to contradict what's just said previously. I was down there also, but I'm not considering myself to be a first responder works. Stop there. It works because he's saying, I share something that you went through, but not to the same degree because you did something much more than I did. Okay, works, stop. But he doesn't do that. So he ends up contradicting that message by saying, but I was down there.
But I was down there.
We have that I'm not considering myself a first responder, which is powerful. Unfortunately, he almost wipes it out because of the but I was down there and because of the fact that he goes on to repeat, I spent a lot of time down there with you.
But I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you.
Despite media requests for proof, Donald Trump is yet to produce evidence he attended Ground Zero with first responders.
Number one, we get the Trump squirm because he's no confidence in what he's saying, so he comes out of the shoulders. And at the same time, just watch his first finger grip the lectern tightly when he makes this claim. So it goes white at the first knuckle as he hangs onto the lectern. And in addition, we see this fear expression, it's this stretching of the mouth horizontally. So we can be very confident he's feeling stressed, anxious, maybe fearful at this point, maybe because he's made a false claim.
One person who was doubtful that Trump was right for the presidency was John Bolton.
You're going to do a fantastic job, and I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bolton, who'd worked for Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, overcame his concerns and was appointed National Security Advisor in 2018.
I felt that after almost 15 months in the presidency, that the weight of the office, the gravity of the responsibilities, would have had an effect on him as they've had on every other president, certainly in the last century. But I found out that that was not true, that he was not affected by the presidency, that he didn't see it as something larger than himself. He thought the presidency was about Donald Trump, and that's the basic explanation for almost all of his conduct. It wasn't about leading the United States, it was about being Donald Trump on the biggest stage he could find. I think it shows that deep inside Trump, there's nothing there.
Finally, after just 15 months, John Bolton quit.
I gave my resignation letter to my secretary. When I got home, I asked her to deliver the letter to the Oval Office, which she did. And about 45 minutes later, Trump tweeted that I had been fired. When reporters and others would ask me about it and say, but the president said he fired you and you say you've resigned, how do you address that? And I would say I'd stake my credibility against Donald Trump's any day. I don't think Trump deliberately lies. I don't think he can tell the difference between truth and falsehood.
His idea of what is truthful and what is reality is so distorted, I think, that the first person that he deceives is usually himself.
Accusations of distortions, deceptions, and now the incredible question, Is this the real Melania Trump?
Whenever she smiles, it's been such a rare event that it's led to speculation that there are fake Melanias, that she's using a body double.
Thank you, folks.
The fake Melania theory started online in 2017, went viral, and is now openly discussed on national TV news shows. Donald Trump has tried to silence the rumors, tweeting that fake Melania was created by fake news, photoshopping a fake image.
Every time I hear the fake Melania, I start to laugh. My blood boils and I say, are you kidding me? Honestly, to know Melania is to know that Melania would never allow somebody else to play her role. Never. Because what if they didn't play it good enough? There is no fake Melania.
The fact that people speculate about fake Melanias says something about the Trump presidency, because never before has there been this sort of speculation about a first lady. And I think that that shows you how Trump is viewed by many people.
What's true and what's fake dominated the most extraordinary press conference ever staged in the White House, after Donald Trump had claimed migrants were invading America.
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may ask one
enough.
other question, Mr. President. If I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
That's
I was going
enough.
to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian
indictments coming
investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his
Well, I'm
butt
not a
like the
big
rest
fan
of
of yours either, so
I understand.
to be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
You aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly over the course of
Okay,
the
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Sometimes destructive aggression is typical of someone in a CEO position or a leadership position, and it's a characteristic of what we call the dark triad. And the triad is a mixture of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy.
That's enough. That's enough.
You've got to be assertive to push a big business.
Americans against one another, sir.
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
No, I'm just
What
asking
he's got is an extreme personality. And dark side personality traits are actually extremely common in high-level business people. And it's not viewed as a mental disorder, far from it.
If you're a president of a country, you've got to be aggressive sometimes when you're attacked. And we see that a lot in Trump.
You are a rude, terrible person.
And I've witnessed almost 50% of those indicators.
But the best business minds, and I think also the best political minds, have got moderate, manipulative, psychopathic, and narcissistic personality traits, all mixed in with much nicer traits like compassion and humility. He's got the dark side traits in spades, but there's nothing kinder, there's nothing more gentle to balance it out.
Before the end of the year, we will have a safe and effective vaccine and we will defeat the China virus. You see how good we're doing relative to other countries and other parts of the world. But the fake news doesn't like saying that. They don't like telling you that.
When Donald Trump accused the media of lying about the COVID-19 pandemic, for many, It was the turning point of the presidential campaign.
The American response was not up to American standards. It was incoherent, I think largely because of Donald Trump.
Concerns rose when the president sounded enthusiastic about treating the virus with disinfectant.
Thank you very much.
He spoke directly to Dr. Deborah Birx, the White House coronavirus response coordinator.
He starts to recall a conversation he must have had with Deborah Birx immediately prior to coming onto the stage.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute.
Oh my goodness. We get a combination of reactions here from Dr. Birx. The first is a disengagement from Trump. So the eye contact goes to the floor. We get the manipulators on her fingers. So if we look at her hands, while Trump is talking, she's manipulating, probably to comfort herself. And the legs pull together in a reaction to the fear and anxiety of what's being discussed right now, of how ridiculous it is. When we're anxious, there's a body tension which we get often in our legs, because the natural reaction in fear is to escape a threat of harm. If she feels this is dangerous for my reputation, this is dangerous ground, and she's fearful, then all the energy goes to the legs to prepare you to run. And that tension, if you can't run, manifests itself in a squeezing together. So she's dispelling that energy of the blood flow going to the large muscles in the legs that are normally used to run into a clamping. And the press picked this up too, because you'll hear the shutters rattling in the background.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute.
If she could escape and run out of this room, I'm sure at this point she would.
And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets...
So this is now particularly problematic. What's interesting is he's continuing to show he's uncertain because his voice volume drops.
As you see, it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of lungs. So
And he's suggesting it might be a good idea for them to check out whether they should look at ingesting disinfectant. The poor woman has to stay on her chair.
1 minute.
You wouldn't wish a pandemic on anybody, but it really exposes Donald Trump's lack of leadership ability and how out of depth I think he is in the role that he's in. Everything's great here, there's nothing to say.
Hey, by the way, I had it. Here I am. I mean, you know, here I am. And now they say I'm immune.
So he spends months saying, no, this is not a big deal. It's almost as though acknowledging this virus is a weakness, and he doesn't want to show that weakness. And yet he's almost in a staring competition with it. Who's going to blink first? Well, it's not going to be the virus.
Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump!
November 2020. Donald Trump is losing the US presidential election.
Good afternoon from a very sunny Washington, where in the last few minutes Joe Biden has gained enough votes to be declared the next president of the United States.
It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies, they are Americans.
Trump's message was defiant, but what was his body language saying?
Thank you very much. Thank you. To protect the integrity of a very important 2020 election, if you count the legal votes, I easily win.
Right at the beginning, we see the Trump squirm as his shoulders move. The shoulder squirm. So it's a secondary effect of a gesture, which means I have no confidence in what I'm saying to you right now.
As everybody saw, we won by historic numbers.
There's an obviously different delivery in this case. Trump is someone who I think likes communicating, and he uses his voice in really interesting ways. Here, it's flat, and it's flat for most of his interaction.
I've never seen such love and such affection and such spirit as I've seen.
Very easy to miss this genuine expression of sadness. The best we'll get from Trump in terms of an expression of sadness is a slight flattening of the eyebrows. And we see it here. This is what he normally looks like. To the image we have on the right here, which is an inner brow raise that's flattened. You can see a relaxation of the eyelids, which is another feature of sadness. And also a slight, very slight, couple of millimeters turning down of the outer mouth corners.
In Philadelphia, observers have been kept far away.
If you separate the message and type it out and read that, you'll hear the words of someone who feels they've won the election. However, if you turn the sound off and take the words out, here is a man who was lost.
And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away.
TV stations and social media began abandoning Trump.
Twitter started adding to Donald Trump's tweets that actually his claims are disputed. And even Fox News started to say, actually, this isn't necessarily the truth. And I think that that has got to add to his sense of, I'm a victim here.
He is in a very dark place. This is literally the first time in his life that Donald has been in a situation, the outcome of which he cannot change. Nobody can buy him out of it. Nobody can use their influence to change the results.
You just have to give him credit for being a performer, a conjurer, one of the best performers I think we've seen in modern politics anywhere in the world in 50 years.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
The definition of a lie is a deliberate attempt to mislead others without prior notification. So if you're selectively taking statistics to create a good impression of you and your party, and you're trying to influence people to think positively of you, it's not a balanced argument, that's deception. It's a deliberate attempt to mislead that his story, his opinion, is the correct one.
It's very, very difficult to come forward and say, do you know what? Okay, it is a fair system after all. I should have put my big boy pants on and I should say, yeah, you won. Well done, Joe. None of the speeches I've seen suggest he's in a place to do that.
And we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won. So I just...
Of course he lies. He lies relentlessly and constantly. But it goes way beyond that, because what happens for Donald is that the more he tells the lie, the more he convinces himself that it's the truth.
Trump has taken this mindset to its most extreme because he's got to be a winner. In his father's eyes, if you weren't a winner, you were a loser by definition, and that is humiliating. Donald Trump cannot countenance that because still at the end of the day, I believe that he's that frightened little boy who is seeking his father's approval.